Captain Alice Forte stepped into Grandview Plaza with one goal: find the perfect dress for next week's gala. To the security team tracking her through their cameras, she wasn't a decorated officer with 20 years of commendations. She was just another black woman in designer jeans, an easy target to meet their monthly quota. Security Supervisor Marcus Webb radioed his team, voice clipped with certainty. Officer Roger Yang responded, his boots already moving toward the boutique entrance, eager, confident, the kind of cop who never questioned his instincts. But what none of them could see beneath Alice's calm exterior was the storm they were about to unleash. 2 decades of service, a captain's badge forged through impossible odds and relentless dedication. They thought she'd crumble under pressure. They couldn't have been more wrong. And in the next 60 seconds, arrogance would collide with a reckoning none of them saw coming. The afternoon light poured through Grandview Plaza's vaulted glass ceiling, painting geometric patterns across the marble floors. Captain Alice Forte moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent her entire career reading rooms and assessing threats. Her leather tote hung from her shoulder, and for once, her phone stayed silent in her pocket. After a brutal month of budget hearings and disciplinary reviews, this simple errand, finding something elegant for the Police Benevolent Fund Gala, felt like oxygen. "Something that says I belong here," she whispered to herself, her eyes sweeping across the high-end boutiques lining the corridor. The mall hummed with Saturday shoppers. Young couples debated furniture choices. A group of teenagers clustered around a sneaker display, their laughter echoing off the polished surfaces. Alice felt her shoulders drop an inch. Work could wait. Politics could wait. For the next hour, she was just another woman browsing. That piece lasted exactly 6.5 minutes. She caught them in the reflection of a perfume store window. 2 security guards holding position 30 feet behind her. The older one, his badge read Webb, spoke into his radio while maintaining direct eye contact with her reflection. His partner, younger, visibly uncertain, kept glancing between them like he wanted to be anywhere else.
Alice's pulse kicked up. 20 years on the force meant she could identify a tail from 3 blocks away. She'd been profiled before in spaces like this, the invisible tax of shopping while black. It never stopped stinging. Target acquired, Sector C4, black female, leather bag, burgundy top, maintaining visual. Webb's voice carried across the corridor, casual and cold. Alice's hands clenched. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, flash the badge clipped to her belt, and watch their faces drain of color. Make them feel exactly as small as they were trying to make her feel. But no, she was off duty. She was here for herself. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of changing her plans. Breathing slowly, she pushed through the glass doors of Bellissima, an upscale boutique known for cocktail dresses and Italian leather. The scent of jasmine and sandalwood wrapped around her. Soft piano music drifted from hidden speakers. Behind the register, a woman in her 50s wearing a pearl necklace and pressed blazer, Diane, according to her name tag, went rigid the moment Alice entered. "Can I help you find something?" Diane's voice had an edge to it, her smile tight and performative. "Just looking, thank you." Alice kept her tone warm and even, though her heartbeat drummed against her sternum. She moved toward a rack of evening gowns, her fingers brushing against silk and chiffon. Through the boutique's window, she could see Webb and his partner hovering near a fountain, both staring directly at the store. "Those are all final sale items," Diane announced loudly, suddenly appearing at Alice's shoulder, "and we require ID for any fitting room use." Alice turned slowly, her eyes meeting Diane's. For a split second, she let her captain's gaze surface, the one that made seasoned detectives confess to sloppy paperwork. Diane blinked first. But before Alice could respond, the boutique door chimed. Heavy footsteps, the jingle of equipment on a duty belt. Officer Roger Yang filled the doorway, his hand resting on his radio, his expression already hardened into judgment. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step away from the merchandise and show me what's in your bag." Alice's world tilted. Every calculation she'd made in the last 10 minutes evaporated. This wasn't surveillance anymore. This was the trap. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the shock and the rising fury, a single question burned. How far would he go if he didn't know who she really was? What happens next will change everything. Alice held Yang's stare, her voice dropping to the register she used in interrogation rooms. "Officer, I'm a customer. I haven't purchased anything, and I haven't left the store. What probable cause do you have for this interaction?" Yang's jaw tightened. Behind him, Webb appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, blocking the exit. The boutique suddenly felt smaller. "Your bag, ma'am. Open it, now." Alice's fingers moved to the zipper of her tote, but Diane's voice cut through the tension. "Actually, I think she should try something on first." The store owner's smile was razor sharp. "We have a gorgeous clutch that would pair beautifully with your style. Let me grab it from the back." Something cold slithered down Alice's spine. This felt choreographed, rehearsed. "I'm not interested in... It'll just take a second." Diane was already moving toward the storage room, her heels clicking with purpose. "Officer, perhaps you could wait outside. We take our customers' privacy very seriously." Yang didn't budge. "I'll wait right here." Alice watched the exchange, her cop brain cataloging details. Webb checking his watch, Yang's hand drifting toward his cuffs, Diane disappearing into the back room with deliberate slowness, the younger security guard outside, now filming with his phone. This wasn't random. This was a setup. When Diane returned, she carried a black leather clutch with gold hardware. Designer, expensive. She made a show of displaying it to Alice. "Stunning, isn't it? Why don't you take it to the fitting room, see how it looks with an outfit?" "I don't need, I insist." Diane's eyes glittered. "Consider it customer service."
Alice's instinct screamed at her to walk out, flash the badge, end this charade. But a different instinct, the investigator in her, wanted to see how deep this went. She took the clutch, feeling its weight, noting the security tag still attached. "Fitting room's in the back corner. Take your time." The small room smelled of lemon polish and desperation. Alice hung her tote on the hook, the clutch on another. She didn't try on anything. Instead, she stood with her back to the mirror, watching the gap beneath the door. 3 minutes passed. Then she heard it, the soft whisper of fabric, the barely audible click of a zipper. Her tote's zipper. Alice's heart hammered as she counted to 10. When she emerged, Diane stood at the register, her expression carefully neutral. Yang straightened, his hand moving to his belt. "Thank you, but I'll pass." Alice reached for her tote. "Ma'am, stop right there." Yang's voice boomed through the boutique. "I have reason to believe you've concealed merchandise." Alice's hand hovered over her bag. She could feel the weight difference. Something had been added. "Open the bag, slowly." This was it, the moment they thought would break her. Alice's fingers found the zipper, and as she pulled it open, she saw the black leather clutch nestled among her belongings, the security tag conspicuously removed. Yang's smile was triumphant. "Well, well, looks like we've got ourselves a thief." Outside, a crowd had gathered. Phones were up, recording. Alice stood at the center of a carefully constructed trap, and for the first time in 20 years, she understood what it felt like to be prey. But they'd made one critical mistake. They assumed she'd break.
Alice stared at the clutch in her bag, her mind running through scenarios like a tactical briefing. She could explain this, demand to see the security footage, call her precinct commander right now and end this humiliation with a single phone call. But Yang was already moving. "Hands where I can see them." His voice had shifted from authoritative to aggressive, the tone cops used when they'd already decided guilt. "Step away from the bag." Alice raised her hands slowly, palms open. "Officer, I didn't take anything. If you check the security cameras, save it." Yang closed the distance between them in 3 strides. "We've been watching you since you walked in. Suspicious behavior, concealing merchandise, now resisting." "I'm not resisting." Alice kept her voice level, professional, every word carefully chosen. "I'm cooperating fully, but I'm telling you I didn't." Yang's hand clamped onto her wrist. "Turn around, now." The crowd outside pressed closer to the windows. Alice could see phone cameras pointed at her like accusatory fingers. She turned slowly, her body language deliberately non-threatening. No sudden movements, no aggression, just compliance. But Yang wasn't interested in compliance. His hand twisted her arm upward, wrenching it into a come-along hold that sent white-hot pain shooting through her shoulder. Alice gasped, her body instinctively trying to move with the pressure to avoid injury. "Stop resisting!" Yang barked loudly, his voice playing to the crowd. "I'm not—" Alice's words choked off as he forced her arm higher, the joint straining. She recognized the hold, pain compliance, used to control genuinely combative suspects, not cooperative women standing with their hands up. "Roger, easy," Webb's voice came from behind them, uncertain. "She's not fighting."
Yang ignored him. His other hand grabbed Alice's free arm, yanking it behind her back with unnecessary force. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the boutique. Too tight, deliberately so. Alice's breath came in short, controlled bursts. The pain was intense, but she'd been through worse in training. What burned worse was the humiliation, the violation, the absolute betrayal of everything the badge was supposed to represent. "You made a big mistake today," Yang hissed in her ear, his breath hot against her neck, "coming into a nice store like this, thinking you'd just walk out with whatever you wanted." Alice closed her eyes, counted to 5. When she opened them, her voice was ice. "Check my ID. It's in my wallet, front pocket of the tote." "Oh, I'll check it." Yang shoved her forward, still gripping her cuffed wrists at an angle that made her shoulders scream. "At the station, after we process you for theft and resisting arrest." "Resisting?" Alice's voice rose despite her training. "I haven't resisted anything." Yang twisted the cuffs. "You're resisting right now. I can add assaulting an officer if you'd like." The threat hung in the air like poison. Alice understood immediately. He was building his narrative, creating justification for the excessive force, laying groundwork for charges that would stick even after they discovered who she was. Diane stood behind the counter, her face carefully neutral, but Alice caught it, the briefest flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. This wasn't about stopping a thief. This was about something else entirely, something bigger. Yang marched her toward the exit, her arms still wrenched at that agonizing angle. The crowd parted like water, phones tracking every step. She could already see the headlines, imagine the comment sections. Another black woman caught stealing, another thug getting what she deserved. None of them knew they were watching a decorated captain being perp-walked through a shopping mall. None of them knew this was the moment that would burn the entire operation down. As Yang pushed her through the doors into the main corridor, Alice made a decision. She wouldn't tell them who she was, not yet. She'd let them dig their graves deeper. And when the time came, she'd bury them in it. The squad car smelled like stale coffee and fear. Alice sat in the back cage, her hands still cuffed behind her, the metal biting into her wrists with every bump in the road. Yang drove in silence, his eyes occasionally flicking to the rearview mirror, watching her like she might somehow vanish. She stared out the window at streets she'd patrolled for 2 decades, past the bodega where she'd stopped an armed robbery her rookie year, past the elementary school where she'd organized the first community safety fair, past the park where she'd talked down a suicidal veteran at 3 in the morning. Every corner held a memory, every block a piece of her career, and now she was riding through it all in handcuffs, accused of a $1,500 theft she didn't commit. The precinct appeared ahead, its familiar brick facade looking different from this angle. Yang pulled into the sallyport, the metal gate clanging shut behind them with the finality of a cell door. He yanked her out of the car with the same unnecessary roughness, his grip on her elbow tight enough to bruise. "Let's go, shoplifter." Alice kept her breathing steady as they approached the back entrance. Through these doors she'd walked 1,000 times, as a rookie officer eager to prove herself, as a detective closing career-defining cases, as a captain reviewing personnel files and budget reports, but never like this, never on the wrong side of the law she'd devoted her life to upholding. The door swung open, the familiar sound of ringing phones and radio chatter washed over her, the scent of burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Home. Yang steered her toward the processing desk, already talking. "Got a retail theft from Grandview Plaza. Subject was combative, tried to—" He stopped mid-sentence. Desk Sergeant Marcus Hill looked up from his paperwork, his reading glasses perched on his nose. His eyes met Alice's and his face went slack. The pen slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the desk. "Captain?" The word dropped into the room like a grenade. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. Officer Chen froze with a coffee cup halfway to her lips. Detective Brooks stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. Lieutenant Ramirez stepped out of her office, her expression shifting from curiosity to horror in the space of a heartbeat. Yang's grip on Alice's arm loosened. "What did you say?" Marcus stood slowly, his 6'4" frame unfolding like a weapon being deployed. His voice was quiet, dangerous.
That's Captain Alice Forte, 3rd Precinct, 20 years on the force. The silence that followed was absolute, the kind of silence that comes before explosions. Alice could hear the wall clock ticking, someone's radio squawking in the distance, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Yang's hand fell away from her arm completely. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale and suddenly smaller. I didn't... You didn't ask. Alice's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. You didn't check my ID when I offered it. You didn't question the security guard's story. You just saw what you wanted to see. Marcus moved around the desk, his keys already out. Get those cuffs off her, now. Yang fumbled with his keyring, his hands shaking. The cuffs clicked open, and Alice brought her arms forward, her shoulders screaming in relief. Red welts circled both wrists where the metal had cut into her skin. Lieutenant Ramirez approached, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. Lieutenant Ramirez, I am so deeply sorry. This is... a mistake? Alice rubbed her wrists, her eyes never leaving Yang's face. No, Lieutenant, this was deliberate. This was profiling, false arrest, and excessive force, and it's not going to disappear with an apology. Yang backed up a step, then another. Captain, if I'd known... If you'd known, you would have done your job correctly? Alice's voice was soft now, lethal. That's the problem, Officer Yang. Your job doesn't change based on who you're arresting. The law doesn't have a badge exception. The other officers watched, transfixed. Some looked ashamed, others angry, but all of them understood what they were witnessing. A line had been crossed, and there would be consequences. Alice turned to Marcus. I want a full incident report, every detail, and I want internal affairs contacted immediately. Yang's face went from pale to gray. Captain, please, I have a family. I just made a mistake. No. Alice stepped closer to him, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. You made a choice, and now you get to live with it.
Alice woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The sun hadn't even fully risen, but her phone vibrated continuously on the nightstand like a trapped insect. She reached for it, exhaustion weighing down her limbs. The internal affairs interview had lasted until midnight. Her shoulders still ached from Yang's hold. The first text was from Lieutenant Ramirez. 3 words. Turn on Channel 7. Alice's stomach dropped. She grabbed the TV remote, her fingers suddenly clumsy. Channel 7's morning show materialized on screen, and there it was, the video. Her video. Exclusive footage obtained by Channel 7 shows a dramatic confrontation at Grandview Plaza yesterday. The anchor's voice was grave, professional. But the woman being arrested isn't your typical suspect. She's a police captain, and what she said to the arresting officer has people questioning police accountability. The video started mid-scene. Alice saw herself in the boutique, but the angle was wrong, cropped. The body cam footage began exactly when she'd raised her voice, not a second before. No context, no framing, no evidence of the planted clutch or Yang's excessive force. You made a big mistake today. Her voice came through the speakers, but the audio had been isolated, enhanced, stripped of the background noise that would have shown Yang's aggression. She sounded threatening, angry, guilty. Then came the worst part, the precinct footage. Someone had leaked that too, but it had been edited, cut, and spliced to remove Marcus's recognition, to eliminate the shocked faces of her colleagues. What remained was Alice speaking to Yang, her voice cold and measured. Your job doesn't change based on who you're arresting. In context, it was a statement about justice, about equal treatment under the law. But edited like this, isolated and weaponized, it sounded like a threat, like a superior officer abusing her power to intimidate a patrolman who'd caught her stealing. The anchor continued. Officer Roger Yang, a 5-year veteran, was following up on a shoplifting report when he encountered Captain Alice Forte. Sources say Yang was unaware of her rank until after the arrest. The question many are asking this morning, did Captain Forte use her position to avoid prosecution? Alice's phone rang. Her precinct commander. She let it go to voicemail. Another call, the deputy chief, then her union rep, each one adding to the chorus of damage that was spreading through the department like wildfire. A text from Tammy, her best friend since the academy, now a defense attorney. Al, don't talk to anyone. This is a setup. I'm coming over.
Alice stared at the screen as Channel 7 ran the edited clip, again and again. Social media tags scrolled across the bottom.
Hashtag corrupt cop. Hashtag badge abuse. Hashtag police privilege. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her blood run cold. Police captain under investigation for shoplifting, intimidating officer who arrested her. Yang had moved first. While she'd been focused on the truth, on procedure, on doing things by the book, he'd been building his defense, controlling the narrative, painting himself as the victim and her as the corrupt cop who'd gotten caught. An email notification appeared from the deputy chief's office. Subject line, administrative leave, effective immediately. Alice sat on the edge of her bed, still in yesterday's clothes, and watched her career unravel in real time. 20 years of service reduced to a 90-second video clip that told only the story Yang wanted told. But something else burned through the shock and exhaustion. Not just anger, understanding. Yang wasn't protecting himself from a wrongful arrest complaint. He was protecting something bigger. The edited video wasn't just about making her look bad. It was about silencing her before she could dig deeper. Which meant there was something worth finding. Alice opened her laptop and started making a list. Every detail from yesterday, every face in the boutique, every moment that felt choreographed. If Yang wanted a war, she'd give him one, but she'd fight it her way, with evidence, with allies, and with the one thing he'd underestimated, her refusal to back down. The phone rang again. This time Alice answered. Tammy's voice came through, fierce and certain. Tell me everything, and I mean everything. We're going to destroy him. Alice smiled for the first time in 12 hours. I was hoping you'd say that. Tammy Horace arrived at Alice's apartment with 2 coffees, a leather briefcase, and the expression of someone ready to go to war. She'd been Alice's best friend since their academy days, back when they'd both believed the system could be fixed from the inside. Tammy had left the force after 5 years to become a defense attorney. Alice had stayed. Now, 20 years later, their paths had converged in the worst possible way. Show me everything. Tammy set up her laptop on Alice's dining table, transforming the space into a makeshift war room. Every document, every email, every piece of evidence you have. Alice laid it out like a crime scene investigation. The boutique receipt time-stamped before her arrest, photos of the welts on her wrists, the names of everyone present, Diane's carefully neutral expression, Webb's uncomfortable body language, Yang's excessive force. Tammy listened, her pen flying across a legal pad, her mind already 3 steps ahead. When Alice finished, Tammy looked up with the predatory focus that made her one of the city's most feared defense attorneys. This wasn't random, you know that, right? I suspected. Alice sipped her coffee, now cold. The way Diane insisted I take the clutch to the fitting room, how Yang arrived so quickly, the phones recording before anything happened. It was theater. Tommy pulled up her laptop, and I'm going to prove it. But first, I need to know who we're really fighting. She opened a database that defense attorneys used to track arrest patterns, search for probable cause violations, identify problematic officers. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Roger Yang's service record. The data that emerged made Alice lean forward. Yang had made 143 arrests in the past 18 months. Tammy sorted them by location, and the pattern emerged like a constellation suddenly visible in a dark sky. 112 arrests. Tammy's voice was quiet, dangerous. 80% of his total arrests, all at Grandview Plaza. Alice felt the pieces clicking into place. That's statistically impossible, not unless he's assigned there or compensated there. Tammy pulled up another screen. Look at the charges: shoplifting, petty theft, trespassing, minor offenses that typically result in citations, not arrests, but Yang arrests every single one. Building numbers. Alice's cop brain was already running the implications. Quota fulfillment. But why arrest instead of cite? Citations are faster, easier to process.
Tammy's smile was grim. Because citations don't feed the system, arrests do. She clicked through more files. Look at the disposition of these cases. 70% never go to trial. Defendants plead out, pay fines, accept probation. But here's what's interesting. She highlighted a column Alice hadn't noticed. Every single one of them is referred to the same probation company. Justice Pay Solutions. Ever heard of them? Alice shook her head, but something cold was spreading through her chest. Private probation company. They monitor defendants, collect fees, and report violations. Except their fees are astronomical. $100 theft charge becomes thousands in monitoring costs, drug testing, ankle monitors, and if you can't pay, Tammy's eyes met Alice's. They send you back to jail for probation violations. A pipeline. Alice stood, pacing now. Yang arrests low-income shoppers for minor offenses. They can't afford lawyers, so they plead out, get probation, then can't afford the probation fees, which sends them back into the system. Exactly. And guess what? Tammy pulled up a corporate filing. Justice Pay Solutions is a subsidiary of Grandview Properties Group, the same company that owns the mall. The room tilted slightly. Alice gripped the back of a chair. They're arresting people in their own mall, then profiting off their punishment? It's a modern debtor's prison. And Yang is the enforcer. Tammy closed her laptop, which means when you walked into that boutique, you weren't just another shopper. You were potential revenue. That's why they framed you. That's why Diane planted evidence. That's why Yang moved so fast. Alice's mind raced through the implications. How many people had been processed through this system? How many lives destroyed by fines they couldn't pay for crimes they might not have committed? But here's the problem, Tammy continued. Yang's smear campaign isn't just about protecting himself, it's about protecting the entire operation. If your case gains traction, if people start looking at his arrest patterns, the whole thing collapses. So he discredits me first, Alice nodded slowly. Makes me look corrupt so nobody believes me when I expose the corruption. Exactly. Tammy stood, gathering her files. Which is why we need more than just data. We need testimony. We need victims willing to go on record. We need someone on the inside. Alice looked out the window at the city she'd sworn to protect. Somewhere out there were people trapped in Yang's system. People who'd been arrested, processed, and forgotten. I know a journalist, Alice said quietly. Roberta Corona, investigative reporter for the City Herald. If anyone can blow this open, it's her. Tammy smiled. Then let's give her a story she can't ignore.
Roberta Corona sat across from Alice and Tammy in a corner booth at Marino's Diner, a place cops and journalists had been meeting for off-the-record conversations since the 1970s. The veteran reporter had sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a reputation for stories that ended careers and changed laws. She'd covered Alice's arrest with the skepticism of someone who'd seen too many edited videos to trust them at face value. 80%, Roberta repeated, writing in her notebook, not typing on a phone or tablet. Old school. Harder to hack, she'd once told Alice. That's not policing, that's harvesting. Can you prove the connection? Alice leaned forward. Between Grandview Properties and Justice Pay? Roberta's smile was wolfish. I already started digging the moment Tammy called. Corporate filings are public record if you know where to look. She pulled out a folder thick with documents. Grandview Properties Group is owned by Meridian Holdings, LLC, and Meridian Holdings also owns Justice Pay Solutions, a private probation company operating in 6 states. She spread papers across the table like cards in a poker game. But here's where it gets interesting. The CEO of both companies is Richard Vance, 48 years old, Harvard Business School, former hedge fund manager. He bought Grandview Plaza 3 years ago for $60 million. Within 6 months, he established Justice Pay and negotiated a contract with the city to provide probation services. Who signed off on that contract? Tammy's pen was poised. City Councilman Gerald Morrison, who coincidentally received a $30,000 campaign contribution from Meridian Holdings 2 months before the vote. Roberta flipped to another document. Not illegal, but definitely cozy. Alice felt the scope of the operation expanding. This wasn't just Yang and a crooked boutique owner. This was systemic, institutional, protected. Roberta continued, her voice low and urgent. I pulled Justice Pay's financial reports. Last year alone, they collected $4.2 million in monitoring fees, drug testing charges, ankle monitor rentals, and probation violations. The average client owes them $7,000 for offenses that originally carried $200 fines. And if they can't pay, Alice already knew the answer. Back to jail. Probation violation, which generates more fees. It's a perpetual revenue stream built on the backs of people who can't afford lawyers. Roberta's expression hardened.
I interviewed 12 people who'd been arrested at Grandview in the past year. Every single one described the same pattern. Security follows them, store employees act suspicious, Yang appears like he's been waiting, evidence that seems planted or exaggerated. She pulled out a photograph, a young black woman, maybe 25, holding a toddler. This is Keisha Morgan, arrested for stealing baby formula, except the store's own security footage, which I obtained through a FOIA request, shows her putting the formula back on the shelf. Yang arrested her anyway. She couldn't afford bail, lost her job. Now she owes justice pay $6,000 and counting.
Alice's hands clenched into fists. How many Keishas were out there? How many lives destroyed for profit? There's more. Roberta pulled out another document, this one marked with yellow highlights. I found internal emails between Vance and the mall's head of security, Marcus Webb. They discuss target acquisition rates and conversion metrics. They're literally tracking arrest numbers like sales quotas. That's evidence of conspiracy, Tammy said, her attorney mind already building the case. If we can prove Vance directed Webb and Yang to make false arrests to feed justice pay clients, we bury them all. Roberta's eyes gleamed. But I need more than documents. I need someone on the inside willing to talk, someone who knows the system and can testify to the corruption. Alice thought of the young security guard at the boutique, the one who'd looked uncomfortable, the one who'd hesitated when Yang escalated. Webb's partner, the younger guard, he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else during my arrest. Danny Torres, Roberta said, already knowing the name. 22 years old, former military, started at Grandview 8 months ago. I tried to reach him, but he's not returning calls. He's scared, Alice said. If he talks, he loses his job, maybe faces retaliation. Then we make it safe for him to talk. Tammy tapped her pen against the table. Whistleblower protections, legal representation, immunity from prosecution if he was coerced into participating. Roberta nodded. And we need to move fast. My editor wants to run the story in 3 days. If we're going to take down Vance and Yang, we need Torres on record before then. Alice looked at the photograph of Keisha Morgan and her child, thought about all the others trapped in the system, thought about Yang's smug face and Vance's profit margins built on human suffering. Then let's go find him and give him a reason to do the right thing.
The apartment building in East Ridge looked tired. Cracked concrete steps, peeling paint on the mailboxes, the kind of place where people worked 2 jobs and still couldn't get ahead. Alice and Roberta climbed to the 3rd floor, the stairwell smelling of disinfectant and something burning on someone's stove. Apartment 3C, Alice knocked gently, 3 soft taps that wouldn't startle a toddler who might be napping. The door opened 6 inches, held by a chain lock. A woman's face appeared in the gap, eyes wary and exhausted. Keisha Morgan looked older than 25. Poverty and stress had a way of stealing years. Miss Morgan, I'm Roberta Corona from the City Herald. This is Alice Forte. We spoke on the phone? The door closed. Alice heard the chain sliding free. When it opened again, Keisha stood there in scrubs, her name tag still pinned to her chest. Mercy General Hospital. She worked in housekeeping, probably just got off a shift. Come in, but please be quiet. My son's sleeping. The apartment was small but meticulously clean, toys organized in a plastic bin, dishes drying on a rack, a child's drawings taped to the refrigerator, everything in its place, held together by sheer force of will. Keisha gestured to a worn couch. Can I get you water? It's all I have right now. We're fine, thank you. Alice sat, keeping her voice soft. This wasn't an interrogation, this was bearing witness. Keisha settled into a chair across from them, her hands folded in her lap, defensive, ashamed. Alice recognized the posture, the body language of someone who'd been blamed for their own victimization. Tell us what happened, Roberta said, her recorder visible on the coffee table. Start from the beginning. Keisha took a shaky breath. It was 14 months ago. Marcus was 6 months old. I was at Grandview Plaza buying formula. The name brand stuff was too expensive, so I picked up the store brand, $23. She stared at her hands. But when I got to the register, my card declined. I'd miscalculated. I was $3 short. The cashier called a manager, and I was so embarrassed. I told them I'd put it back, that I'd come back later. What happened next? Alice leaned forward. Security showed up, 2 guards. They took me to a back room, said I'd been behaving suspiciously. They searched my purse, my diaper bag, found nothing because I hadn't taken anything. But they called the police anyway. Keisha's voice cracked. Officer Yang arrived. He didn't even ask what happened, just looked at me, looked at Marcus crying in his stroller, and said, "Another one." Alice's jaw tightened. Another one, like Keisha was part of an assembly line. "He arrested you?" Roberta asked. "For attempted theft. $23 of baby formula I tried to put back." Keisha wiped her eyes. "They took me to jail. I had to call my mother to pick up Marcus from child services. I couldn't afford bail, so I sat there for 3 days until my public defender got me a plea deal. Pay a $200 fine, 6 months probation. And that's when justice pay got involved," Roberta prompted gently.
Keisha nodded. "The judge said I'd be monitored by a private probation company. I didn't understand what that meant. I thought I'd just check in once a month, stay out of trouble, and it would be over." Her laugh was bitter. "They charged me $75 a month for supervision, $50 for drug testing, even though my charge had nothing to do with drugs, $120 for an ankle monitor I didn't need, late fees if I couldn't pay on time." She pulled out a folder from beneath the coffee table. Documents spilled across the surface. Bills, payment demands, court notices. In 6 months, my $200 fine became $5,000 in fees. I was working full-time, but I couldn't keep up, so they violated my probation, sent me back to jail. I lost my job, lost my apartment. My mother had to take Marcus full-time because I couldn't care for him. Alice picked up one of the bills. The itemization was predatory. $25 for each phone call to her probation officer, $15 for every email, $35 for a missed appointment even when Keisha had been at work. "I'm still paying them," Keisha said quietly. $300 a month. If I miss a payment, they send me back to court. I can't save money, can't move to a better place, can't give Marcus the life he deserves, all because I was $3 short for baby formula. Roberta's pen moved across her notebook, capturing every word. But Alice saw something else in the journalist's eyes. Fury, the kind that fueled investigations that changed systems. "Ms. Morgan," Alice said carefully, "would you be willing to testify about this, to go on record?" Keisha looked at her son's bedroom door, at the drawings on the fridge, at the life she was fighting to hold together with threads and prayers. "If it means other mothers don't go through this," her voice strengthened, "yes, I'll testify. I'll tell anyone who'll listen." Alice reached across the table and squeezed Keisha's hand. "Then we're going to make sure everyone listens, and we're going to end this." Outside, on the cracked concrete steps, Roberta turned to Alice. "That's the story. That's what brings down the whole system. Not corporate documents or arrest statistics. Her, that mother fighting to survive a punishment that never fit the crime." Alice looked back at apartment 3C, where a young woman was trying to build a future from rubble. "Then let's make sure her story burns down everything Yang and Vance built." The wire felt cold against Alice's skin. The technician from Internal Affairs had taped it carefully beneath her blouse, the microphone no bigger than a shirt button, positioned just below her collarbone. She stood in the parking garage of the Grand View Corporate Center, checking her reflection in her car window. Professional, composed, nothing that would suggest the digital recorder capturing every word. "Testing, testing," her voice was barely a whisper. In a surveillance van 2 levels down, Tammy's voice came through the tiny earpiece. "We hear you perfectly. Remember, let them make the offer. Let them incriminate themselves. And Al, be careful." Alice touched the wire through her blouse. 20 years of wearing a badge, and this was the first time she'd worn one hidden. The irony wasn't lost on her. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt endless. Her reflection stared back from the polished doors. Captain Alice Forte, decorated officer, about to walk into a room with people who'd tried to destroy her, people who were about to try again. The reception area of Vance and Morrison Legal Partners was all glass and chrome, expensive, intimidating by design. The receptionist barely looked up. "Conference room B, they're expecting you." Alice's heels clicked against marble as she walked down the corridor. Through the glass walls she could see them. Yang, looking smaller in civilian clothes. Marcus Webb, the mall security supervisor, his face tight with stress. And 2 men in suits she didn't recognize, but could identify by type. Lawyers, the kind who specialized in making problems disappear. She opened the door. Every eye turned to her. "Captain Forte," the older lawyer stood, extending his hand.
I'm Richard Brennan, counsel for Grandview Properties. Thank you for agreeing to meet." Alice didn't shake his hand. She sat, folded her hands on the table, and waited. Brennan's smile flickered. "I'll get straight to the point. My clients believe there's been an unfortunate misunderstanding. Officer Yang acted in good faith based on information provided by mall security. The subsequent media attention has been regrettable for everyone involved." "Regrettable," Alice repeated, her voice flat. Yang shifted in his chair. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "We're prepared to make this right. Officer Yang will issue a public apology. We'll arrange for a settlement that acknowledges the, let's say, procedural irregularities." "How much?" Alice asked.
The second lawyer, younger and hungrier, leaned forward. $250,000, tax-free, along with a full reinstatement to your position with all back pay and benefits. Alice let the silence stretch. Let them think she was considering it. "There is, of course, one condition," Brennan said carefully. "We understand a journalist from the City Herald has been asking questions. Roberta Corona. She's been making inquiries about arrest patterns at Grandview Plaza, about Justice Pay Solutions." There it was, the real offer, the real threat. "Ms. Corona's story is based on incomplete information and inflammatory speculation," Brennan continued. "It would damage good people and good businesses. We're hoping you might use your influence to help her understand the full picture, perhaps encourage her to reconsider publication." Alice's pulse quickened, but her face remained stone. "You want me to kill the story?" "We want you to provide context," the younger lawyer corrected. "You're a respected captain. If you were to go on record saying the arrest was a misunderstanding, that the system works as intended—" "The system," Alice's voice cut like a blade. "You mean the system where you arrest people for minor offenses, then trap them in a debt cycle they can't escape? Where a $23 can of baby formula becomes $5,000 in fees?" Brennan's expression hardened. "Captain, I'd advise you to think carefully." "I have thought carefully," Alice leaned forward. "I've thought about Keisha Morgan, about the 12 other victims Roberta interviewed, about how many more there are that we haven't found yet." Yang finally looked up, his face pale. "Captain, if you knew what was at stake—" "I know exactly what's at stake. Your career, Webb's job, Vance's profit margins. But you know what's more important than all of that? Justice, the thing we're supposed to serve." Brennan stood abruptly. "Captain Forte, you're making a serious mistake. If that story runs, we'll pursue defamation charges. We'll challenge every arrest record. We'll tie you up in litigation for years. And we'll make sure everyone knows you're doing this out of spite, not principle." Alice rose slowly, her eyes meeting each man in turn. Yang looked away. Webb stared at the table. Only the lawyers held her gaze, and even theirs wavered. "Gentlemen," she said quietly, "I came here because I wanted to hear you say it. I wanted to hear you admit what you've been doing. And you did. Every word, every threat, every attempted bribe." Brennan's face went white. "What are you—" Alice unbuttoned her blouse just enough to reveal the wire. "I'm saying you're done. All of you. Officer Yang, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, false arrest, and extortion. Mr. Webb, same charges. And Messrs. Brennan and Vance." She smiled coldly. "The FBI will want to have a conversation with your private probation scheme." The door burst open. Federal agents flooded the room, badges high. Yang tried to stand, but an agent pushed him back down. Webb put his hands up immediately. The lawyers started shouting about due process and illegal recordings. Alice walked toward the door, past the chaos, past the men who'd thought they could buy her silence. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. "You thought I'd choose my career over what's right. That's your first mistake. Your second was thinking I'd ever stop being a cop, even when I'm the one being arrested." She left them there, surrounded by agents and consequences, and headed for the elevator. In her ear, Tammy's voice was triumphant. "We got them, Al. Every word, every admission. We got them all." Alice smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. "Now let's finish this."
The morning the City Herald hit the stands, Alice's phone didn't stop ringing. She sat at her kitchen table with the newspaper spread before her, reading Roberta's words for the 3rd time. The mall trap. How one police captain's arrest exposed a multi-million-dollar scheme to profit from the poor. Roberta had done it justice. Every detail, every victim, every dollar extracted from people who had nothing. The front page featured two photographs side by side, Alice in handcuffs at Grandview Plaza, and Keisha Morgan holding her son, her face finally unashamed. By noon, the story had gone viral. Cable news picked it up. Social media exploded. The hashtags shifted from hashtag corrupt cop to hashtag justice for Alice and hashtag The morning the City Herald hit the stands, Alice's phone didn't stop ringing. She sat at her kitchen table with the newspaper spread before her, reading Roberta's words for the third time. The mall trap, how one police captain's arrest exposed a multi-million-dollar scheme to profit from the poor. Roberta had done it justice, every detail, every victim, every dollar extracted from people who had nothing. The front page featured two photographs side by side, Alice in handcuffs at Grandview Plaza, and Keisha Morgan holding her son, her face finally unashamed. By noon, the story had gone viral. Cable news picked it up. Social media exploded. The hashtags shifted from hashtag corrupt cop to hashtag justice for Alice and hashtag shut down justice pay. Yang's doctored body cam footage was exposed as the fraud it was. People who'd been silent about their own arrests at Grandview Plaza started coming forward, dozens of them, then hundreds. At 2 o'clock, the U.S. Attorney announced federal charges: conspiracy, wire fraud, civil rights violations. Richard Vance was arrested at his estate. Yang and Webb were already in custody. The lawyers who'd tried to bribe Alice were disbarred pending criminal investigation. Justice Pay's assets were frozen. And at 4 o'clock, Alice stood on the courthouse steps. The crowd stretched down the block. News cameras formed a semicircle. Reporters shouted questions. But Alice waited, her eyes scanning the faces until she found the ones that mattered. Keisha Morgan standing near the front, her son on her hip. Tammy beside her, fierce and proud. Roberta in the press section, notebook ready but smiling. Alice stepped to the microphone. The crowd quieted. 2 weeks ago, I walked into a shopping mall on my day off. I was a decorated police captain with 20 years of service. I'd earned commendations, closed major cases, and mentored dozens of young officers. But in that mall, none of that mattered. To the security guards tracking me, to the store clerk who framed me, to the officer who arrested me, I was just another target, another number, another potential source of revenue. Her voice was steady, but emotion threaded through every word. I was lucky. I had resources, I had friends in the legal system, I had a voice people would eventually listen to. But there are hundreds of people who went through the same system who didn't have those advantages. People like Keisha Morgan, who lost her job and her apartment over $23 of baby formula. People who were trapped in a debt cycle designed to extract every penny while giving them no way out. She paused, letting the weight settle. This case was never about me. It was about a system that saw human beings as profit centers. It was about police officers who forgot they served the community, not corporate interests. It was about how justice in America can be bought, sold, and weaponized against the most vulnerable.
Alice's eyes found Keisha's. Today, federal charges were filed. Justice Pay has been shut down. The contracts linking Grandview properties to private probation have been terminated. But that's not enough. We need legislation to ban predatory probation practices. We need oversight of private security operations. We need to ensure that what happened to me, to Keisha, to hundreds of others, never happens again. The crowd erupted in applause. Questions flew from reporters, but Alice held up her hand. I want to say something to every person who's been arrested at Grandview Plaza, who's been trapped by Justice Pay, who's been treated as less than human by a system that should protect them. You are seen, you are heard, and what happened to you was not justice, it was exploitation. There are lawyers ready to help you challenge those charges. There are advocates ready to fight for you. And I promise you, I will use every ounce of my authority and experience to make sure your voices are not forgotten. She stepped back from the microphone. Tammy was there immediately, gripping her arm. Keisha pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face, and Alice pulled her into an embrace. Thank you, Keisha whispered. Thank you for not giving up. No, thank you for trusting me with your story. That evening, Alice returned to her apartment to find an official letter from the police commissioner. She opened it standing in her doorway, her heart pounding. Captain Alice Forte, you are hereby reinstated to full duty with all honors, back pay, and benefits. Furthermore, you are commended for extraordinary service in exposing corruption and upholding the highest standards of law enforcement." She didn't finish reading. She just stood there, holding the letter, thinking about the path that had led here. The humiliation, the pain, the doubt, and finally the victory that belonged to so many more than just her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Roberta. The press conference hit 10 million views. The mayor just announced a task force to investigate all private probation contracts in the city. "You did it, Captain." Alice smiled, exhaustion and triumph mixing in equal measure. She'd walked into that mall as a target. She was walking out as something far more dangerous to corrupt systems everywhere. A cop who refused to look away. A woman who wouldn't be silenced. A champion for those who'd been told they didn't matter. And she was just getting started.
If you made it this far, you've just witnessed Captain Alice Forte's complete journey from victim to victor. But here's the thing, tomorrow's story is even more intense. We're talking about a teacher who walked into her classroom and found something that would change hundreds of lives forever. The kind of story that'll have you on the edge of your seat from the first sentence. But I need to know you're with me. Drop a comment right now telling me where in the world you're watching from. Seriously, I want to see every corner of the globe represented. Are you in Lagos, London, Los Angeles? Let me know. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I post a new story every single day. Stories about ordinary people who found themselves in extraordinary situations. Stories about justice, courage, and people who refused to back down when the system tried to break them. You've seen what Alice did. You've seen how one person's refusal to stay silent brought down an entire corrupt operation. These stories matter. They shine a light on injustice and celebrate the people who fight back. So here's what I need from you. Comment where you're from, hit subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow with a story that'll blow your mind. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.